Hi, I'm Chad with Move for a Guitar. This lesson is from our series Music Theory for a Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to talk more about augmented chords. First off, if you like the diagrams for everything in this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. And this e-guide will be something that you can study and use as a reference for years to come. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download it. This is part 6.17 from our series Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So early in this series, we talked about augmented chords and how they are built. By now you should know they're built root 3, sharp 5. We went over that extensively early on, but I also talked about how they didn't come out of the major scale or major scale harmony, and we would dive more into them later. And now we've covered some scales that you can actually get them out of, which are the third mode of the melodic minor scale has an augmented chord as a triad. The third mode of the harmonic minor scale is the same. The triad is an augmented chord. And also you can get augmented chords out of the whole tone scale. And those are scales that you can get the chord out of, but a lot of times it's not really used from a scale. It can just be used more of as a passing chord or for a suspended type of sound in music, or to replace a 5 chord going to a 1. And that can get pretty deep. We're not going to talk too much about that in this lesson. I'm going to talk more about what's unique about the augmented chords, just like I did with diminished seventh chords. And you know from the previous lessons that I talked about augmented chords being symmetrical. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And what's on your screen right now are G augmented chords, which G augmented is G, B, D sharp. That's the root 3, sharp 5. These are the inversions of that triad. You have root, position, first inversion, second inversion. And you should remember from those lessons that augmented chords are all built on major third intervals. So every note is a major third apart. So no matter what note you start on, going to the next note in the chord is a major third apart. So that means you can hold the shape, move up into major thirds, and just keep that shape, and it's going to be the next inversion. So G goes up to B, that's a major third apart. B goes to D sharp, that's a major third apart. D sharp goes to G, that's a major third apart. And that's similar to diminished seventh chords, except diminished seventh chords move up in minor thirds instead of major thirds. Another thing that makes augmented chords similar to diminished seventh chords is that any note from the chord can be the root. So I'm showing this in G, these are G augmented, but these can also be B augmented chords or D sharp augmented chords, which are also E flat augmented chords. So if G is the root, G is obviously 1, which is the root, B is the 3, the major third, and D sharp is the sharp 5 or augmented fifth. But if I made B the root, B then becomes the root, obviously. D sharp is the major third, and G, which is actually an F double sharp if you're considering B the root, would be your sharp 5. Because in B, F sharp is your perfect fifth, so sharp that one more time and you get an F double sharp. Or I can make D sharp the root, so then it would be root for the D sharp, G would be the major third, and B would be the sharp 5. That wouldn't be how you would write it though. The most typical way would be to make it an E flat, which is inharmonic equivalent, because then these notes make more sense with the E flat. So E flat would be the root, G would be the major third, and B would be the sharp 5. So that means if you play G augmented triad, you're actually playing a B augmented triad and a D sharp augmented triad at the same time. It just depends on the playing situation for which one is actually the appropriate chord that you're using. And so all the notes are the same, it's just the intervals change compared to the new roots, just like with diminished seventh chords. Or if you started on A flat, which is in the green, you'd actually be playing A flat augmented or C augmented or E augmented. You'd be playing all those at the same time, and the playing situation would determine which one was the proper name. But if A flat was the root, then C would be the major third and E would be the sharp 5, and so on. If you made C the root, then you just change the intervals compared to the new root. Or if you played starting on A, you'd actually be playing an A augmented, D flat augmented, or F augmented at the same time. Or you could start on the next note up, that would be B flat, so you'd be playing either a B flat, a D, or an F sharp augmented at the same time. So just like diminished seventh chords, any note from that chord can be the root. So if you play one augmented chord, you're actually playing 3 at the same time. So starting on G would be 1, starting on A flat would be 1, starting on A would be 1, and starting on B flat would be one, and that would cover all your augmented chord options. So that's more about augmented chords. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to talk about pentatonic scales that can be built out of the scales that we've talked about in this section. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.